Good morning. It's David Card here, the research director for Street Fight, and I'm just going to play a moderator role today. And we've got 4 different presentations from some of the leading sources of local and mobile technology and marketing research. So actually, you know, rather than take up the time, why don't I just let you guys get into it, and we'll each do our presentations.
All right, hello. I'm Charles Lachlan. I'm with the Local Search Association, and I am going to share with you some new research that we're just completed. It's called the Technology Adoption Index, and what it is tracking the small business shift to the cloud. So what we're doing is we're looking at the whole notion of small businesses adopting cloud-based tools, you know, for everything from accounting, payroll, supply chain, customer relationship management, and so on, and understanding the pace of that adoption and what it means for this industry, the local search industry. So what we've done is it's a new tracking study. We're going to do it twice a year. We have a 1,000 respondent sample. It's a representative mix of small businesses, and we've measured it across several verticals: auto, retail, professional services, home services, personal services, and again, we're sort of focused on basic business operations that small businesses engage in every day, and how are they adopting cloud-based tools to do these. And then the broader implication is once that shift occurs, or as that shift occurs, you know, how will those relationships evolve with those cloud service providers, and how will that impact, for example, media companies, which also have established relationships with small businesses? Is there going to be a tension there? Are there opportunities for either side to sort of move into the lanes of the other? So that's one of the things we want to understand from this research over time. So why the Tech Adoption Index? I thought about Tech Monitoring Index, but that would be TMI, probably not a great acronym. So first of all, big dollars. Right now, there's not a lot of forecasting around this space. I got one estimate, there's about 10 billion worldwide currently, and that's a fraction of a percentage of the software industry overall. We think this could grow to a much, much bigger number as small businesses expand into this space more and more, which our research is measuring. So this is sort of, I was talking to Sunir Shah, who runs the Small Business Web event, and he referred to it as being at the starting line in the pole position. So we think this number is going to get much, much bigger. We're working on a forecast to quantify that. So shift happens. So we think there is going to be there is a shift underway, and we think it's going to occur at a pretty robust pace. If you look here, again, we measured across all these various business operations: CRM, payroll, human resources, accounting, marketing and advertising, and again, supply chain. CRM is where the shift is taking place most rapidly, but we're certainly it's happening across all of these areas of operation. So CRM is sort of the lead piece of this, and that sort of makes sense in a lot of ways because it's critical to business operations. Also, we think CRM has the greatest potential to expand into other areas that, again, sort of begin to reach into some of the areas that marketing and publishing companies are operating in. So, and again, that was already shifted. This is intent to switch to an SMB SaaS service in the future. That could be next year, year from now, 2 years from now. And again, CRM is leading the charge here. So, also, inertia. There is while there's a fairly large shift, there's also a fairly, sizable number who haven't shifted and, are not indicating that they will shift. And the main reason for that is pure inertia. And again, 57% of them said they're comfortable with what they have today. When you sort of dig into the data a little bit, this tends to be older businesses. Not so much differentiation by vertical, but there is a sort of a tendency. Businesses that have been around a long time get a little comfortable with the tools that they use. Newer businesses, I think, are going to be much more likely to engage in the shift to cloud-based tools. So, disruption alert. We do think there's big potential for disruption in this whole cloud services area, and we have so one of the things we did is we asked, if you were to purchase a service outside of the core area of the business that you're working with. So for example, your Yellow Pages or your newspaper partner or your digital agency partner wants to sell you an HR platform or an accounting package or something like that. You know, what's your likelihood to be interested in that versus your payment provider offering you email marketing or Facebook campaigns or something like that? 62% said they were more likely to hear out the software company versus a media company. I think the number shows media company was in the 30s. Then there was a significant other, we don't know, component. Yeah, I expected this response essentially because it basically says that we're going to give the shot to maybe the company that we don't have to talk to, because I think once when people get involved, I think things get complicated, and sometimes there's trust issues. I think there's historical issues with media sales organizations, having sort of a choppy relationship with their small business customers. The SaaS companies, they're new. They provide software that they self-purchase in the cloud. It works generally. It provides a needed service. I think there's just an openness to working with them. So I think there's an opportunity there, and it's certainly a threat to the people in the sort of the existing media space. I think this is an interesting data point, and certainly it's sort of central to what we're going to be examining going forward with this research in terms of what does this mean, and how can companies seize the opportunity that this presents and also sort of overcome some of these obstacles. And again, give me the combo, please. So interesting, David, you shared some research yesterday, talked about, in terms of media purchases, this desire to buy, a la carte, essentially. We asked this about sort of cloud tools. If you're a small business and you're buying an accounting package and you're buying an HR package and a CRM, maybe you have something for your taxes, maybe you have something, you're purchasing your supplies through Amazon or whatever it is, do you want something to sort of put that all in one place, write one check or have one credit card debit per month, and it's all sort of through one dashboard, through one platform? It's a difficult thing to imagine being put together across all of these areas, but to the degree that these can be aggregated and simplified, we asked, what would your preference be? And 60% said they would much prefer to work with a single solution. So at least this suggests there's an aggregation opportunity as well for a reseller, perhaps, to bring all of this together in one solution for small businesses. So what we're seeing is, sort of to summarize, the shift is underway. Certainly there's a sizable minority of small businesses that haven't gone to the cloud for their basic operations. Some of them will never, but the number that have is substantial, and we think that's going to grow substantially. We think that represents a huge revenue opportunity. It's going to be a much bigger industry than it is today in just a few years. And it represents both a threat and an opportunity, I think, to companies in this room, in the sense that you have some competition now that, as a SaaS business gains customers, they're going to want to increase their yield on each customer. Naturally, they're going to be expanding into adjacent services. It's easy to see a payments business or even an accounting software, or certainly a CRM, expanding into areas that deal with, how do I get more yield from my customers? How do I retarget my customers? Why don't we do some email marketing now that we have all the customer information? It's a sort of a natural progression. So I think there's the main reason for this research is to understand that new competitive field and what it means. So on the nose.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks a lot,
right.
Charles.
Thank
That's
you.
very provocative. We'll ask a few questions as we go along, but there's some interesting patterns there that compare and contrast. Maggie, why don't you tell us what's going on in video?
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Maggie John from the IAB Interactive Advertising Bureau. So this morning, I'm going to share with you some research findings and key highlights from the digital commerce research conducted by IAB Mobile Center of Excellence. Before that, I'd like to provide a quick overview and introduction of IAB. The Interactive Advertising Bureau is a trade association that represents digital media companies and the marketing industries in the US. And our mission is to empower the media companies and marketing industries overall to thrive in a digital economy. And here are some examples of our members. There's really just a short list of them. But as you can tell, there are a lot of familiar names here. So altogether, the IAB represents over 650 media companies, technology startups, and technology providers that are responsible for selling 86% of US digital advertising. And the research I'm going to share with you this morning is on digital commerce. So the background of the research is the research was first released in November last year, right before the holiday shopping season. The research was conducted by the Mobile Center of Excellence at the IAB in collaboration with IAB China. So the key objective is to understand and compare the user adoption, the behavior, and perceptions of digital commerce on both computers and on a mobile device. And for today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the US landscape of digital commerce. So what is the current landscape of digital commerce in the US? About 84% of online adults have made a purchase in the past 12 months. And if we break it down by device, 3/4 have bought a product or service on a computer versus 1/3 on a mobile device. And clearly, mobile commerce still has plenty of room to grow. And if we look at these online shoppers closely, you can see that the millennials, they have a higher adoption rate of mobile commerce. And this is in a direct contrast to online purchases on a PC. Actually, the older age cohorts here have a higher adoption rate of purchasing on a computer. And online shopping is a regular behavior. The majority of them actually shop at least monthly on either computer or PC. And over 1/3 do so on a weekly basis. So however, the frequent online shopping behavior doesn't mean that consumers are giving up on retail stores or local stores or offline channels. In fact, online shoppers are really resourceful consumers. They're relying on both online and offline channels to best meet their needs. As you can tell, someone can start their shopping journey online, but ended up making a purchase in a local store. Or vice versa, someone can start looking and browsing in a physical store, but wind up making the purchase online. So altogether, about 1 in 3 in-store purchases actually first start online. And about 1/4 of online purchases actually were made after someone visits a store and start looking at the products or services. So we're truly living in a multi-channel world. And here's one example of the online-offline multi-channel shopping behavior, showrooming. 71% of online consumers have looked into a product or service on their smartphone while in a physical store. And almost 1/4 regularly do so. And also multi-channel also means multiple digital channel. 43% of the online consumers tend to use multiple digital devices along their purchase journey, from research to eventually purchase. So now if we put everything together, for an average online consumer, out of their total purchases, slightly more than half, 53% of the total purchases still happen in a physical store, offline. And 42% takes place online. And if we further zoom in to look at the total digital purchases, mobile accounts for slightly over 1/4, and the rest of the purchases still take place on a computer. So again, back to the theme, mobile commerce definitely has a lot of room to grow. And so we look into a few growth opportunities. How can we further foster the growth of digital commerce? Social is one of them. As it turns out, online shoppers are very vocal, very social crowd. 69% have left a comment, a review online after making a purchase. And these reviews and social comments play an important role in their decision making. 60% of online shoppers report that they have made a purchase online after reading a positive review. And 1/4 have been inspired to purchase simply after seeing a picture or a post on a social media. Another important opportunity is technology, the integration of new technologies to online shopping. So we looked at VR, AR, and 360 product view. Not surprisingly, consumers are more familiar with 360 product view. I think most of us can relate to that. A lot of us have used this feature. Actually, more than half of the consumers have used 360 product view in the past. In addition, slightly less than a quarter have also played with or tried out AR or VR during their shopping experience. So these new shopping features and capabilities powered by technology will definitely further spark consumer interest, drive purchase, and also create market differentiations across various shopping sites and shopping mobile apps as well. So this is what I have to share so far. Feel free to check out the full report on IAB.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Maggie. That's great. Sounds like the multi-channel shopping experience may be farther along even than we think. So next we'll to Greg continue the mobile theme, I guess, and see what the action looks like there.
Yeah, apparently we all think mobile is going to be important. If I could have my slides up there. Yeah, there we go, great. So listen, I thought what I'd share a little bit is some recent research that we've done over understanding what is the fundamental value of mobile in a marketing mix. Marketers, unfortunately, still don't have tools that measure that. Media mix modeling doesn't do that in any way. Most of the multi-touch attribution players are unable to really go down to either, they can maybe get a broad view of mobile, but they can't get into mobile subsegments. So I'm going to show you sort of where we've been on what has been a 3-year journey to try to understand that fundamental ROI. And in fact, this is the facts about that. It's not the conjecture, it's not the, we have a lot of people looking at their phones, which, I kind of hear a lot, this year of mobile kind of thing that's gone on forever. One fact, though, for sure, that I want to kind of feature is that I actually did go to my teenage kids. I mentioned, hey, I'm going to Williamsburg to speak. That must make me a hipster. And they said, absolutely not, Dad. You don't qualify in any way for that. So listen, some of you don't know who the MMA is because we're kind of the newest of the trade associations in many regards, although, a little over a decade. It's been 3 years since we executed a pretty significant turnaround of the MMA. This is representative of the MMA and its members. This is the board of directors, the global board, and you can see we're represented by both major CMOs, and then also we have the major CROs of each one of the sort of what I'd call broadly the 4 horsemen, Twitter, Facebook, Google, and Snap. But here's the thing. So 3 years ago, we launched this research called SMOX. That stands for Smart Mobile Cross Market Effectiveness. I just like to have an X in the name, so that kind of worked for the whole thing. And this research really, for the first time, had built a methodology. We worked with a firm named Marketing Evolution to really figure out what that methodology should be, got that validated by the Advertising Research Foundation. We have now executed 11, in fact 12 studies. One we'll be releasing, which will be the most important study the mobile industry will ever do. It's coming up. I'll show you a snippet of it today, privately, don't tell anyone. But we've done 11 studies so far with our partners ANA, ARF, and the 4As, and you can see the brands who participated, and we do have permission to use their names. These are the campaigns that we looked at. And there's sort of a couple interesting observations. First off, they're multimedia campaigns, TV, radio, magazines, internet, everything. But notice the transition when we started with AT&T way back when, and they only ran display in mobile. That's all they did in their campaign. Whereas now you can see the sort of range of mobile that exists in the campaign, in particular around Allstate. These are those results. Basically what we found that you look for what is the optimized level, what is the optimum return on investment of mobile in a marketing mix. That optimized level should be between 15 and 20%, as you see in that sort of middle column. And when these marketers run 15 to 20% in their campaigns of the total mix, they end up with an increase of performance. In this case, either on a brand basis, 17, 18%, which the first 2 studies were focused on brand. Every other study beyond that, we've really been able to measure sales. And you can see that there's sales data ranging there anywhere from 7% to generally 25% is the range. And in fact, just to kind of summarize that for you, so you can see the data, helps understand a little bit better, we do have one crazy anomaly, at least we had one what we thought was a crazy anomaly study that was executed for Coca-Cola in Brazil, where we saw a 60% increase in profit for that particular campaign. So we can't really explain, we don't really know. I mean, we have some theory conjectures. You know, there was a smaller percentage of smartphone providers or smartphone penetration in Brazil. That could contribute to it. It's probably concentrated against a sort of wealthier segment of the population, obviously. So again, I separate that because I don't want to come up here and say that, you know, you should expect a 60% increase in sales as a return on investment from an ad campaign just by adding mobile, because that's what this is telling you. And these are really campaign $20 million or whatever, without mobile, campaign $20 million with mobile, and mobile done right. There's a qualifier to that. Now, some of the other data that we've seen around this is we've seen all sorts of nutty kind of things. For example, a Subway campaign, this is against recall. It's not my favorite measure for marketing effectiveness. But we found that there wasn't much derivation, that, you know, you could run certain day of the week and see some performance. But when you looked at the increase in performance of that campaign targeting that 11-to-1 time segment for, in this case, Subway, you see a 1,300% increase in the campaign effectiveness than running it in the average of the rest of the day. It would really argue strongly for, in particular, QSRs that they should be running really all of their advertising between 11 and 1. Now, that has some other complexities to that statement, but nonetheless. We also saw in the case, obviously, location works big, but location when done right. This is from Walmart. We found that retargeting with those small ads didn't work. Retargeting, if we were to do an expandable ad, but also retargeted or proximity, they were close to the store. We see some incremental increase in foot traffic. But when you get it just right and you look at proximity to store and that larger ad unit, as evidenced in the upper right-hand corner, we see a 40% increase in store traffic. So the challenge that you as marketers will have is that mobile is unfortunately a little complex. The varying combinations of either time of day, or you're looking at sort of targeting based on sort of proximity, you're targeting based on a variety of ad formats, or you have targeting based on context. And this was the first inclination, went, oof, boy, this is not going to be easy for marketers, we respect that. And then it got really interesting with a Unilever study that we released late last year, or early this year, late last year, where we actually took and looked at, so what was the campaign average for TV, radio, magazines? We saw that display ad on the right, that it performed well on an ad awareness basis, aided awareness, but on a sales basis, that ad sucked. I mean, literally sucked. It produced no increase in sales whatsoever until we looked at that same ad and we added in weather data. This is for Magnum ice cream bar. And we saw a small increase in awareness, but the whole trajectory and impact of that ad changed dramatically to now that ad is worth 50% more than anything else in the campaign. And we see this kind of thing, that targeting right for your brand in a customized way. It's not this generic, oh, you know, you're better off looking at audience, or you're better off looking at time of day, or you're better off looking at location. It varies. Here, Allstate, it was all about behavioral targeting. It was all about actions that they had taken at some point, and Allstate has asked us not to disclose how they got a 300% increase in their advertising performance. They wanted to hold that. But also, too, we see big increases in contextual. We also, and further in Allstate, certainly we would see an increase in location, but in fact, it was actually retargeting that was actually equally valuable, which is that they had been to a dealership at one point, or again, that behavioral metric isolated is even greater impact. So, you know, and then there's about 4 or 5 different cuts in each one of those about really what worked. And so much so that for Allstate, just getting mobile right didn't increase sales, in this case, 4%, it increased sales 7%. And again, we see this again and again. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, we've just completed a study, not released. We will release it at our CMO Summit that's coming up in about 6 weeks, I think, 8 weeks, wherever we are, end of July. And in that particular study, we saw some dramatic behavior, whereas we saw that in broad swatches of audience, we see 300, in fact, I know there's an adjustment to these numbers, we see 400 and 500% increases just by getting sort of the type of audience right. You need to know who that brand is. I can't share it with you now. I don't have permission to do that. If you talk to me later, I'll maybe slip you a little bit of information or follow up with me later, or join us at our CMO Summit. We'll show you more there. Thanks.
Wow. Mobile measurement. All the more troublesome than you ever thought it was. Well, there's plenty to dig in there, I think. Cory, why don't you tell us what's going on with small business?
I sure will. Hi, I'm Cory Elliot from Borrell Associates. We model, track, analyze, project, forecast advertising spend on a very local level. So not the big brands you're talking about, but the dry cleaners in every market. So I want to bring to you some of the things we're finding this year. So I've got a lot of data here, and I'm going to jam through it pretty fast. So keep up, and if you have questions, come see me later or talk to me later. They don't let me out much. Okay. So the big thing that's happening on the local market is it's an important time here when you're looking at digital ad spend versus traditional or non-digital ad spend. It's a 50-50 thing going on right now. Half the money being spent on a very local level is going to digital. Now that affects all the media companies that are sitting in local markets, right? Well, they can't get that big digital trajectory. They're not playing in that pool. They're playing in a portion of that pool, somewhere between 15 and 20%, depending on the market. But we're going to get into that a little deeper here in just a little bit. Let's concentrate on the local advertisers and what they're doing. This is from our local advertiser survey. We run the largest advertiser survey in the nation. 7,500 people or 7,500 businesses took it in 2016. We're in the middle of it right now. This is asking, of all of the media that you spend advertising on, what are you going to increase, what are you going to decrease, what are you going to keep the same? Big story here, look at the bottom row, that's digital. 63% of the local businesses who bought digital advertising say they're going to increase their budgets in that, which begs the question, where are they going to get the money from, right? Okay, well, here it is. They can either increase their budget or they can take away from traditional media. Half of them are going to do a mix of both. They're going to increase and take away from traditional media. 29% are going to take away from traditional media. That means 3 out of 4 advertisers are going to affect their traditional media budgets. Why? Well, we got a lot of open-ended questions, or a lot of open-ended answers, I should say, and this sums up the sentiment from a real estate broker that says traditional isn't doing it anymore. It's online's where it's at, whatever that means. But I think there's something else you should pay attention to here, and that's the last part of this quote, that you need to stay on top of digital. That's a foreshadowing of something that's coming up. Okay, ROI, we knew from the study last year that ROI was the main thing that were on the local advertisers' minds. So we asked them this year, hey, what is the marketing objective that is hardest to establish for you? Red means it's hard, green means it's easy. ROI, calculating ROI was #1 on that list, and then budget and time. I think it's interesting to also look at what's easiest, they say, to establish, and that's reaching a targeted audience and determining who to advertise to. Isn't that could be a weird dichotomy? If I know my target audience and I know how to get a hold of them, how come I don't know how to calculate my ROI? Do I have the right audience? Do I have the right mix? It's a good question. And we see it when we ask, what do you want from local media companies? These are the kinds of answers we're getting from local advertisers. They want to understand how their money's working for them, for the ROI. And I know we just had a panel up here about the DIY space. Look at this last quote. And this is just something for everybody here to be aware of, the sentiment that's out there with local advertisers and what they're thinking about. This guy is saying, look, those do-it-yourself dashboards, I can't handle anymore. I really can't handle anymore. I've got one for everything. And I know we talk a lot about mobile up here. I did a quick query this year when we asked, what do you need help with? We had nobody so far, a couple thousand, say they need help with mobile. Why? Why is that not popping up? Well, it's not that they aren't buying. In 2015, 20% of local advertisers bought some kind of mobile ad. In 2016, this is what they said they were planning to buy. Doesn't mean they bought it, but out of the mobile different ad types, this is what they said they were planning to buy. So why aren't we hearing more about it? Why aren't we seeing it? And that could be a couple reasons. One could be a comfort level. This was a completely different study we did that tried to analyze the reactions of different age groups of marketers and their comfort level of buying any particular ad type. Mobile's down there towards the bottom. Blue means I'm really comfortable buying it. Orange means I'm not comfortable buying it. So not a whole lot of people saying they're comfortable buying mobile, a whole lot of people saying they're comfortable buying internet advertising or digital, but not mobile. And a lot of people saying that they're not comfortable buying mobile. Now, the other question, or the other thing that could be, on the local level, not the national level that you just saw where people were on the forefront years ago doing mobile campaigns, by the time it's gotten down to the local level, mobile might have lost its, not its allure, but it's ubiquitous. What is mobile? Digital is mobile, mobile is digital. It might have lost the mobile designation, so to speak. But they are buying digital, and they're buying digital with non-digital media. 3 out of 4 local advertisers are buying a combination of digital and non-digital media to advertise. And who's pitching this stuff? Well, it depends on the local media rep that's coming in. We ask this of the advertisers. Hey, when a local media rep comes in, are they pitching digital, and are you buying digital? Well, it depends on the local media type. Some are better than others. Look at radio. 30% of the time when radio comes in, they don't pitch anything digital. They have a little work to do. And when we say digital, what are we talking about, right? So on the local level, this is what's driving. This is what local advertisers are buying and what they like to buy. Social media, email, search engine, and display ads. Those are the big things, right? Now, they have trouble establishing ROI, but they can certainly score this stuff on effectiveness. And we had them do that. And so if you get that, plus how much they've spent, you can make a cool little, you can tell I'm a research geek, because you can make a cool grid like this. Okay, left to right is relative effectiveness, how they've scored things, okay? Right means 5, that's really good, that's really effective. Up and down is how much money they say they have spent on these things. So you want to be cheap and effective, right? You want to be in the lower right-hand corner, that green corner. Well, search engine marketing is there. It's effective, but they're spending dough on it, as related to social media and email marketing, both effective and cheap as far as a local advertiser is concerned. And here's good old display ads, which are being pushed by a lot of media companies out there. Warning, they're not rating it as effective as others. And this is where local media is playing. When you look at the money being spent in a local market, it looks like this. This happens to be St. Louis. But local media can't touch what's being spent in Facebook and paid search and all those other pure plays and all those other digital opportunities. Their slice of the pie is about 18% in St. Louis, and any one media company we figure in St. Louis can hope to gain $17 million in digital. So there's still a hunk of money for them to play around with. And they do have the relationships out there. But are they actually listening to the needs of the local advertisers? And the local advertisers are starting to wake up because they're understanding. They've had 3 or 4 years ago, it was great because they were doing their own things, they were buying their own DIY stuff, and they were learning metrics, and they were able to go back to the local media companies and say, how come you can't give me metrics like this? I'm getting ROI. Well, it's a new dawn now because now they're starting to link the fact that what they're getting here might not be making the cash register sing, or they're not seeing the connection. I want to read real quick this one guy who sums up the problem. He's a restaurateur in San Diego. Check this out. This is the problem right now. We asked, what is your main marketing, not objective, but what's your biggest problem? What is hard to do? And he said, keeping up with ever-changing technology of advertising, new algorithms on Facebook, new social media sites, new discount websites, new trendy websites, blogs that have large impacts in our industry, making the time to learn about new marketing opportunities. I'm an owner and manager of the restaurant. It's hard to create time to learn the new opportunities and then create the time to execute the marketing strategy, making our advertising look professional while still creating our ads in-house. Clean photographs, smart verbiage, and eye-catching visuals are hard to create sometimes. Knowing how much budget to allocate to each marketing strategy, realizing that in the restaurant industry, the best marketing is often not for sale. Word of mouth, food bloggers, restaurant critics, food trends, an article from a local foodie website. These things have a much larger impact on our business than any paid advertising. It's about influencing now. It's about understanding what's happening on the website and their social media presence and the email strategy and what they are putting in traditional advertising. All of that. Some people are going to call that marketing. I think there needs to be a new word. I think there needs to be an influencing word that captures everything, and that's who's going to win the business here. So, then this is, I'm only 2 slides away. There's a storm brewing, and y'all got to know this. This is new this year. When we're looking through all these open-ended questions, we're getting a lot of local advertisers saying, yeah, digital, I'm not seeing it like I did before. It's not enough for them to go running back to traditional media or anything like that. I'm not suggesting it's a renaissance for newspapers, but I'm putting up a red flag saying they aren't a couple years ago, they were really it was really sexy to see me push a Facebook post and see the results. Now I'm realizing that, oh crap, it's not making the cash register ring, or I'm not seeing it. So that's important to know. Okay, last slide. Here's my thoughts. SMBs are learning. They're learning themselves. They have to. They had to, and they're getting smarter. They're smarter than they were 5 years ago. See plenty of people saying that they're smarter than any rep coming in to talk to them. And it's no longer about non-digital versus digital ads anymore. That's over. It's about this whole influencing ecosystem that has to be tied together. Who can tie it together for these guys? Well, I tell you, the local media companies have the relationships. That's what they have. They're in there every day with these guys, talking to them. And don't count them out, because they're also building the capabilities. They're buying up digital agencies. They're getting digital services inside. Dallas Morning News, look at the recent history with them. They went on a buying spree of digital agencies, and now they're a powerhouse that can deliver a lot of things to a local advertiser. But remember, there are rumblings in the distance. There's a far-off storm gathering that you need to tie. Whatever you're selling, you need to tie back to them. You can't just be a new flashy thing for a local advertiser, because that crap isn't going to work anymore. These guys are smart. They want help. They don't want bullshit. They're done with that because they taught themselves. They thought they had it, and they realized, oh, maybe I don't, so they're really wary.
Sounds good. I think we have, I'm going to ask these guys a couple of questions, and if people have questions from the audience, tee them up, and we'll save a little bit of time for them. But I guess some of the themes I'm detecting, because we went in a particular order by random, it does feel like there's this opportunity to connect the front end with the back end on some services. So you talked about, Charles, you talked a lot about how the CRM stuff was going to move to cloud first before advertising technologies, for instance. But it feels to me like that's a compelling, if you could weave those pieces together, you could connect some of the dots, right? So you could connect your actual purchase data or your customer information with your ad targeting. Do you think that, is that a viable conclusion based on some of the data?
Well, yeah, I think where we think this may move, again, like a CRM platform, and again, I think CRM is sort of something that sort of grew up in the cloud. I think it sort of replaces, keeping track of your customers in some old school way, like in a spreadsheet or something. So it's sort of an original cloud-based function in a way. But yeah, it's sort of logical that they would use all that data and sort of execute what you do with the data. So we sort of...
So it doesn't sound like you're as excited about the opportunity of a machine or a system that would plug those things.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think, well, one thing, I'm interested in your point about digital advertising, because, I think the sort of, are people going to start pulling back from digital advertising? I'm not sure that's what you're saying, but sort of where does the money go? And I think, your point is that, well, the salespeople are in that position to, take advantage of that. I'm a little skeptical about salespeople in general, and I think there's an automated future, I think.
Okay, fair enough. That makes some sense. I was, one of the other things that intrigued me, the mobile was so complicated, or potentially complicated, and I wondered, two things I was going to ask you about. One, confirm or deny, or confirm that my takeaway was, one of the simplest takeaways was that if you do 20%, approximately 20% of your media mix mobile, that feels optimum right now.
Yeah, well, marketers have had no metrics to that, and they aren't able to measure it themselves. So until they have their own, we have 11 studies done worldwide that suggest that you want to aim for 20%. That's the sort of those who want to lean in and get their optimized. The issue, though, is that I have another study that, again, is not public that's going to reset that whole thing
Okay.
in a way that I never saw coming.
Okay.
So.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, and actually anybody on the panel, is the sort of distinctive ways that a small business might measure success with marketing versus an enterprise local marketer might measure success. A lot of enterprise marketers are used to measuring the efficiency of the ad buy rather than necessarily, butts in seats or sales in stores. I mean, they do that too, but they already assume they know how to do that. What's the interesting thing going on there? Is it a strikingly different approach to measuring those two different kinds of effectiveness?
Strikingly different. You mean how a large enterprise
Yeah.
and a small company might do? Yeah. I launched a business called Cars.com a number of years ago. It just went public here a couple weeks ago again after spun out from Gannett. But it was interesting. I always found that auto dealers and local merchants had a significant better understanding of the return on investment they're advertising than bigger companies did. It was just an interesting anomaly because they have a feel because it's their damn money. I think, though, that this point where you got into it, that the level of complexity for them to figure out what's unique about their business and trying to, I think is going to be really challenged for them to really see that and know that they're using it in the best way to see that return, and that's part of the thesis we've seen. So.
Okay,
One thing I would
Go
like
ahead.
to add, just in addition, is a great attribution question, basically measurement attribution. I think that applies to national advertisers, retail mom-and-pop shops around the corner as well. And a lot of work we've done, especially related to location local, a lot of technology providers, startups, they're able to provide location-based tracking. So the foot traffic, the store visitation, and everything can be calculated really down to the level of campaign or time of day, for example. And so a lot work with attribution vendors like that will really help the local businesses.
But the holy grail the industry's got to get to is around multi-touch attribution. I mean, that is where we're going. That is what will happen, and it will take time to flow through organizations. And that area right now is just a mess. So
who's we got 20 seconds left. Twitter length response, who's likely to be a good source for this kind of attribution? Is it agencies, media companies, technology suppliers, Facebook, Google?
it ain't agencies.
It ain't agencies, okay, that's one vote. Corey, what do you think?
I
Not
think
media companies
I
anymore?
still have faith. I think it's smart media companies, but you're asking a hell of a lot from them.
Well, Snapchat just acquired Place, which is a location-based attribution company. So
Yeah, I think it's
could be media
location.
company, could be startups.
Okay, you say
Startups.
location.
Yeah.
All righty, well, that's great. Give it up for these guys. A lot of meat, a lot of data to talk about going